Hey guys, welcome to the Gulf Coast Growth Show. Again, I'm your host, Jason Lee. My co-host, Clint Aiken, when we're virtual, can't be in studio. So we did have an opportunity to hop on a call, a quick Zoom podcast today with Mr. Brian Malone, the Vice President of the Pearland Economic Development Development Association or
Corporation.
Corporation. There you go. And one of the big things about I probably couldn't be more excited because I actually live in Pearland. So now I'm going to get all the good ins and outs of what's happened in my own hometown. We're excited about that. And then we're going to talk today about the growth of Pearland, maybe the history of Pearland, share a little bit about some of the development projects, things that they're doing, businesses and opportunities that they're bringing to the area. It continues to grow. The last time I checked here in the state of Texas, I don't know if they're top 5, top 10, but they were that and maybe Conroe and a couple of places up north seem to be the most expansive areas here in our region. So it's phenomenal to see. I get to see it firsthand because I drive through there. This new road work that's happened with 288, it seemed like that was one of the better and faster road projects I've ever seen. And so we're just seeing great growth over there and would love to share the story. So Brian, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Jason, it's great to be here. Look forward to visiting with you about Pearland and the exciting things that we're seeing happening here. It has been, I've been in Pearland for 6 years, as we were visiting earlier, and it's just been phenomenal to see the projects, the growth, and the things happening here. So it's a great community to be in. I couldn't be more pleased as to where I landed.
Fantastic. Now, I know you have a pretty extensive background. We were talking before the show. You've been doing this for years. What made you decide to pick Pearland? I mean, a person with your resume probably could go anywhere, and you ended up, I think you said, in the last 6 years here in this part of the country. So, what brought you to Pearland?
Well, I mean, like all things, personal lifestyles change, and actually, my wife ended up receiving a job here in the Houston area. And so we actually lived apart for a while we were trying to find something for me to do. And a wonderful opportunity happened here in Pearland, and I was fortunate and able to come on to the team. So as I mentioned, I've been here 6 years. It is a great community to be in terms of doing economic development. We have all the tools that are required and necessary for us to compete for projects and win projects, quite honestly. So that's how I got here. I mean, it was not initially, a point in my stop that I thought I'd ever be in Houston. But since coming here, we have just loved living in Pearland, love the Houston area. It has just been a great place for us to be, and so many things to do. We're just enjoying the heck out of it.
Well, that's great to hear, Brian. I know you hit the nail on the head. It is such a great place and so many different things to do. Plus the logistics. I think from Pearland you can be on the water in about an hour. You can be downtown in about 30 minutes. You can be in the Galleria in about 30 minutes, depending on what time you leave. And with the new expansion on 288, it can. I mean, I've had to catch myself a few times because I've gotten too accustomed to just skipping on that bad boy, and all of a sudden it's a few dollars extra adding up on my bill. My wife stopped me the other day. It's like, hey, you got to be on the thing every single day. I'm like, man, it's just so nice, to get past the traffic, and I'm downtown in like 15 minutes. It's amazing. So talk to us about the background of Pearland. I mean, I've only known it, it's interesting. It's almost like this little, everybody now knows of it because it's so close to the med center and everything. But I mean, it's kind of still developing quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about the history.
Yeah, you bet. Well, of course, Pearland started as, a very small city, as most places did. And up until recently, really was still small. When you look at our population growth, in 1990, we were still about 18,000 people. So, that's a nice sized city. But then you look at what happened with Beltway 8 being completed, 288. And then all of a sudden we see an explosion of population in Pearland. And that has just really just been phenomenal. In 2000, we were just under 40,000. Now we're over 131,000 people, and we will continue to grow. So, that is a really steep growth curve if you look at going from being, essentially a rural community to to now we're actually the third largest city in the Houston metro. So, that is just a phenomenal growth, obviously, but those things, happen for a reason, obviously. And mobility was a key for us initially, I think, in being able to do that. And then you really had some forward thinking folks on the city council in, chamber and the EDC looking at how do we take this juggernaut in a sense and make it even better, because I think that's one of the things that Pearland really looked at is planning for the growth, controlling the growth, setting the tone for our community and what we wanted it to be. One of the things that we talk about now that came out of our strategic plan is being a community of choice. And I think that really is important for us as we can grow, continue to grow, but our growth will slow down. But we always want to be a community of choice so that people are choosing to live here in that regard. But you were talking about the Texas Medical Center, and that was just a phenomenal driver, obviously for the Houston region, but also for Pearland. I mean, we have one couple zip codes that have probably 10,000 people that work in the med center. So that has been a factor in our growth in terms of people looking for a place that had that proximity. And it's even better proximity with the toll lanes up on down 288 as you were talking about. But that was an initial driver also. So when you factor in closeness to downtown, to the med center, mobility, and then Pearland just creating, I think, a product that people desire is really part of our growth pattern. And as you mentioned, we have been one of the fastest growing communities in the state and in the nation since 2000. That growth will slow down. We'll probably, grow up to about 147,000 or so, I think, over the next coming years. So, it's going to slow down just because all our large tracts are really developed out. So we're having infill growth in that regard, but we'll continue to see that growth. And then obviously our region will continue to grow. So it is just phenomenal, something that we've seen happen here in Pearland.
Yeah, so when I think of all the different cities and areas that we touch up against, here at the Economic Alliance, it's interesting to me because Pearland, they all kind of have, they have a lot of industry that they can kind of claim to, right? If you're Deer Park, it's a lot of petrochem and refinery. And if you're over in certain parts of town, there's different, there's a lot of industrial in the Pasadena area. But Pearland, I guess it's kind of a hodgepodge, right? There's really just probably a melting pot of different industries and things, and I guess people coming in from all different sectors into that area because of the logistics, right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think if you kind of look historically at what Pearland was, obviously there was, because of the oil and gas industry, there was a lot of relationship to that. When you look at manufacturing, in the high skilled manufacturing, people were requiring high tolerance engineering design for products. That is initially what really Pearland thrived on in terms of our workforce. And then the related industries, pipes, tubing, those type of things initially were, what was the drivers. And slowly that began obviously to change as our community changed. I mean, obviously we are now, have changed into what I would say we're a major life science community. When I came to Pearland, there were no hospitals in 2014. And then within 2 years, we had two major hospitals open, HCA Houston, Pearland, and then Memorial Hermann opened their hospitals both on 288. So you're looking at a situation where that's almost a day and night change. And then you look at the activity that the Economic Development Corporation has focused on in terms of recruiting quality businesses to Pearland. One of the things that was really probably important for us is to, in the city, is to work in developing what we call the Lower Kirby District. And the Lower Kirby District is just southwest of 288 and Beltway 8. That's about a 1,200 acre area that we work in and really have worked in terms of creating amenitized sites, creating a quality environment so that when businesses are looking for a site, they will see that area and say, this is really where I need to be. It has great visibility. Obviously, mobility is a key factor, but we have been very successful in that in terms of changing some of the recruiting to actually do have the capability to bring in life science companies. One of the first companies that we recruited was a company called Cardiovascular Systems Inc.
Mm.
We brought them into Pearland. They're not a huge company, but they initially set the tone for the Lower Kirby district, and then followed Dover Energy, Merit Medical, Mitsubishi brought in a huge facility, and then recently, with Lonza bringing in their cell and gene therapy, which is actually the world's largest cell and gene therapy facility in the world.
Wow.
Um, they have 300,000 square feet, and right now they're running about 500 people, and they will continue to grow. So that is a major thing for us in terms of when you look at industry and changing uh, the makeup of your community. Because the good thing is we knew we had the workforce here for a lot of these industries. We just needed to have the businesses here. So we're focusing on bringing those in. Uh, Tool Flow, which is a Berkshire Hathaway company, sited in the Lower Kirby district. And then the most recent one is Indris and Hauser. They just opened up really a show place, a regional headquarters facility in the Lower Kirby district, over 112,000 square feet. But it is definitely a showroom in that regard. And I think that has been something that when we looked at Pearland, what do we need to be doing? What type of companies do we need to target? Obviously, medical is something that we want to be aware of, medical device, life sciences, just because our proximity to the Texas Medical Center. So that's hugely important. But then other jobs, professional and office are very important. Um, you know, Additionally, I mean, I talked a little bit about the hospitals. One of the things that people probably don't realize that Kelsey Seabold has their administrative headquarters here in Pearland, and they have over 800 people that work in Pearland. So, I mean, when you look at that, how do we change our community in terms of business recruitment? That's one of the ways. The population growth obviously has fueled our growth, which led to the commercial and retail development, and that's just something that, has just been a plus, I think. But those things all factor in for people wanting to come to Pearland. But for us really to continue to be successful, and one of the reasons we've been successful is because of the really quality schools that we have in Pearland. We cross multitudes of school districts. Pearland's actually in 3 counties. Most people don't realize that, but we're in 3 counties and have a multitude of school districts. But we have 2 primary districts: Pearland ISD and Alvin ISD, the majority of our community. And both of those have created quality schools to where when you compare our schools in Pearland against schools in the Houston area or the state, our schools are ranked as some of the top ranking schools. So that's an important driver for people wanting to come to Pearland, because you have to have quality schools, good mobility, obviously things to do in terms of shopping. And then I think one of the things that Pearland has really done well in is looking at that future. If you can imagine being a city of 35,000, and then 20 years later you're 130,000. Well, that requires a huge amount of infrastructure, because we are talking about, we're having to build water and sewer treatment plants, roads, drainage, parks, and all those things that come with it. So the city has been very proactive in terms of creating those amenities that the citizens desire, the citizens need, and looking at those. So I think that's one of the key things that comes out of it. And a lot of that has really been focused because we do a lot of strategic planning. In probably about 2012, we had a Pearland 2020 plan that we worked with the city, the chamber, governmental entities, education on, seeing what we needed to do in that time frame. Was 8 years ago, for those 8 years, and worked on that plan. We recently just did a new plan, our Pearland Prosperity Plan, that we completed just actually and adopted last year, that we are now implementing. And two of the key things is, then we have really is just two overarching goals when you kind of look at it, you know, and that's for economic growth and diversification. So we definitely want to have opportunities for our residents to uh, live here and work here, because you know, that's important. As we've learned in COVID, you know, it's nice to be close to home and be able to be close to your services. But the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is we want to be a community of choice in the greater Houston area. We want people to continue to come here and seek to be Pearlanders and be residents. So those are some important things I think that a lot of times people take for granted. They think that all this growth that just happened, some of it did, of course, because of the residential, but everything else had to be really planned and well thought of in terms of, you know, how do we have those services that people need in that regard. So, you know, those are some things I think that have really been the highlights in terms of us getting here. But, you know, we are definitely continuing to change in terms of our business outlook and who we're looking at. We continue to look at and work with projects that are, you know, looking to move to Pearland and that are needing a quality place to be. So I think that's just an important goal for us to keep and maintain.
Fantastic. And I think you guys have done a great job. Again, we've been watching it build out. And I know that, like I was saying, the 288 project moved very fast. I think it was probably if not just a few years from the time that it really kicked off. It felt like it was going to be an eternity. And then we got on the other side of COVID, and it was just ramped up. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that guys were probably able to work on the roads when they were probably closed down and probably pushed some stuff up. I know that's happened in multiple areas because they were able to keep contractors working during that time. So I know that helped quite a bit. And one of our organizations, Association of Builders and Contractors, did a lot of work to make sure that happened. And
Yes.
people like the Economic Alliance work behind the scenes to make sure that jobs keep pushing out. And I think it's really important for our audience to remember that you know, if you're considering where to live, you keep talking about a choice, you know, a place where you can pick and choose. The economic development, every city has an economic development organization like Brian's. And so I know that I had the opportunity with one of your employees to go through the website and
Uh-huh.
see a lot of the things that are available and educational tools that are available. So if you're trying to find a place to live, what a great way and a resource to have people like Brian and these folks, because you're making a big decision. You're going to determine where you're going to go, not just proximity, but what are the school districts like? What's the future of that place look like? What's the development look like? You could really make an educated decision when you start making a purchase of your home. And people like Brian are in the business of helping you grow the value of the region around you. And so they have those tools and resources available. And later, before we leave, I'll let you give everybody the website information. Brian, one of the things that I've noticed specifically about my season and time in Pearland is now, while I don't think there's any region in Houston that's void of flooding and water. I mean, it's just we're Houston, so we're going to be we're going to be dealt that blow. But I've noticed that even when some of the major floods, there's parts of Pearland that still maybe in the lower sides, maybe closer to the Friendswood side, that still suffer from some high water. But for the most part, heading down through 288 and through a lot of the newer developments and even new divisions, they've managed to steer clear. I know my neighborhood, I've been there for 3 years. In the neighborhood before that, I was on the other side of Pearland. I'm both close to 288. Now I'm on the Friendswood side. I've been through 3 major storms, 3 of those major flooding incidents that have transpired across the city where people have had to deal with that. And we kind of, I'm knocking on wood over here. We always laugh, not laugh, but we always say to ourselves in my house, we're like, what is going on? How do we, are we in some kind of, vortex over here? Tell us a little bit about the flood drainage and everything. I mean, you guys seem to do a great job of steering clear of that and staying on top of it with all the development that's going on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, drainage is such a huge issue in the Houston region because, we're flat. I mean, other places I've lived, you had a lot of terrain and you had a lot of fall, but, the Gulf Coast area is essentially a flat area. And then you look at our soils, which are a lot of clay, which retains water and prevents water from, going down. So it does create issues. But I think one of the things that Pearland did was really adopt some standards for the drainage, so that you had to actually build storm detention ponds and those type of things. And then we also have a partner in our drainage district, Brazoria County Drainage District number 4. So it's really been a hand-in-hand type situation, working with the city, with the drainage district, looking at how we're going to prepare for those storms. And as you mentioned, the majority of Pearland did quite well in Harvey. The areas that suffered are in the floodplains, primarily around Clear Creek when you get right down to it. Those areas obviously suffered, and that's an unfortunate situation, but, those were built way before anyone had any inkling of, good design standards. We still have some other areas within the city that, have some issues, but, they were built, in the 60s and that type of thing. So they weren't built to modern standards. So I think that's an important thing when you're looking, at a community. What have they done to address that? And Pearland's been very proactive in that regard, and we continue to look at it. That's one of the first things that when we're looking at projects, that comes up. Did this site flood during Harvey, or is this in a floodplain? Because businesses obviously are very keen to that. They can't have their operations, impacted, by water coming into a building or something like that. So, but Pearland has done really well. I'm like you, I've lived on both sides of the city and seen those storms, and the effects, and been amazed at, what's happening. But, and of course, we continue to address those things with the, eventual, we're working with Harris County on the actually widening of Clear Creek, so they will go in and do a lot of expansion on the Clear Creek system itself, so that it will be able to hold more water, detain more water in that regard. So Harris County is the lead agency on that, and it's a core project, and it's a multi-million-dollar project, but it'll take them a while to go from up there by 288 all the way back down towards the Friendswood city limits. So they will be widening that channel and making it even better for us in that regard. So the drainage is one of the things that obviously is hugely important to everyday life, and it's something you take for granted until it rains 50 inches. So in that regard, but yeah, that's something else. But one of the other really neat things, Jason, that's going to happen because of that Clear Creek expansion is Pearland is in the process of putting in a trail system that will be adjacent to Clear Creek. So eventually we're probably going to have over 20 miles of trails along Clear Creek, so that'll go from like Dixie Farm on the very southeast end all the way over to 288, and, then underneath 288, then over to Shadow Creek area. So that's going to be a huge amenity. I think, people really enjoy, biking and walking and running and those type of things. So that will continue to be built out. And that kind of gets back to one of those things about, building quality infrastructure, quality things for people to have and be able to do. So, and that's just a offshoot of a drainage situation. So I think that's where we look for those opportunities to take advantage of those types of situations. And it makes sense for us to do that and, create that quality place for our citizens.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and I think it'll be fun for the community as well. So I think that's exciting times. Specific to one of the things that I've observed too, I think a lot of people lose sight of is there's a lot of industrial stuff and logistics and transportation. One of the things I think we just saw built an Amazon distribution center right there at the corner of Beltway and 288. And that's been huge. I don't know if it's because of the distribution center or not, but I will say this. I ran into an Amazon issue the other day, and I needed something immediately, and I was able to get something on order that day. And I have to think that's because I got this huge distribution center on the corner. Tell us about the proximity because there's a lot of industrial work going up and down the Beltway right there, the warehousing, things of that nature. What other industries or what other major players do you think that helps draw? Because we talked a lot about the medical side right there at 288 being part of that region. Does that open us up to other industries or opportunities because of all that warehouse space and all that other? I don't know if that's necessarily Pearland proper or if that's technically in Houston, Maybe you can help us answer that question, but it feels like it's in our backyard.
Yeah, it is in our backyard, but it is not in Pearland
Oh, got it.
in that regard. But I think that's just something when you look at that whole phenomena of those large industrial warehouses being built. There's such a huge demand, and just the Amazon fulfillment center that you were talking about. They put that up so fast, it was just amazing. But there's such a more of a demand, I think, for warehousing and those type of things, that we'll continue to see that growth around our periphery in that regard. So, and that's just a benefit for us, obviously. I mean, because we know that there will be people, our citizens will end up being able to work in some of those places. Those people will come to Pearland to shop, to eat in that regard. So it's not a negative for us in that regard. I think that's just when you look at the future trends, the whole Beltway will continue to grow like that and continue to fill in as those opportunities present. For Pearland, we are a little bit different in terms of, what we recruit in that regard. So we're, really trying to select companies that are high wage paying in terms of that,
There you go.
require a lot of skills. And that really portends into when you look at our workforce, it's a very diverse workforce. We're actually one of the most diverse cities in the United States when you look at it in terms of our ethnic makeup. So that's something that really portends well. Then, 46% of our population has a bachelor's degree or higher.
Wow.
And that's just phenomenal. I mean, so that really tells you that, what type of workforce capabilities do we have. So obviously we're going to recruit and target to that in that regard. So that's important for us, but we will continue to, work in the life science industries, working that, because we know have a great toehold with Lonza, with Merit Medical. We have some smaller companies called Adient Medical and Base Pair Biotechnologies. So, we work with very small to very large in that regard, but that's obviously very important. And then when you look at the future, apparently, we expect to see more situations like with Kelsey, more office headquarters coming in that regard. So we expect to see, that continue to build out and develop. We have the Ivy, which is at Lower Kirby, which is just south of Bass Pro. That's about a 40-acre development that will also be able to house, some office in retail and then multifamily type situations. So that type of growth will continue to help position Pearland as being a community of choice, we think.
Fantastic. Well, just one last question, and then we'll hit the big questions, right? The best places to eat. But so for our audience, which we touch up on a lot of different cities. I'm sure those that listen, I'm personally gonna share this with a lot of folks and there in Pearland, so they can learn more about you guys and the work you're doing and the great stuff happening in our great city. When it comes to how you guys work, I mean, are you a government body? Are you funded by the government? Are you tax driven? Or like, tell us about that, so so we understand the work that's going on. Because the way I understood it, it is a third party in a sense that you guys serve as similar to the Economic Alliance. You're around development, but you're not necessarily you're not the city, right? Tell us about what you guys do exactly.
The Pearland Economic Development Corporation is an entity that was voter approved by the citizens of Pearland. And what they did is they dedicated a half cent of our sales tax to economic development purposes. With that being said, so we receive our funding from the citizens of Pearland, but we're integral and very obviously related to the city of Pearland. We are a separate corporation, but our city council approves our budget and also approves our board of directors. But then we operate with our board, approve our budget plans of work, and go about that. But in that regard, I think it's important that, those strategic plans really come into play, because that's really what we're operating under and, moving forward with. So we have the capability to do a lot of different projects, and that's how we're actually able to work with those companies like Andrews Hauser and Lonza and Rolex Shutters and Kimlon to help those companies come here to Pearland. We have the ability to provide them with assistance, incentives, in when they come here. So that's something that's important. But um, our corporation, I mentioned, we have a board of directors, which is 7 members, and they serve staggered terms. But that's who we go to for policy and guidance in that regard. And then, we have a staff of 6 people that work continuously on economic development. And that encompasses a lot of different things. I think you met with Jess Bowerly earlier, and some of the things that we do deal with corridors. Well, we identify corridors that need enhancement and work. We've done a lot of work in terms of beautification, making there again, Pearland that community of choice, so that when you come to our community, it looks presentable, it looks right. So we spend a lot of time on looking at that. How do we enhance those things, make things better? The other areas obviously is mobility. We work with our city on developing those corridors in terms of being able to move our citizens effectively. The city is about to is doing actually a huge road project extending McCard Road all the way over to Cullen. So,
Oh,
and
wow.
that'll go from Makawa all the way over to Cullen. So that will be another east-west transportation artery that, will help apparently. And keep in mind, used to the only way that you went east-west was on Broadway. Now we have, obviously Broadway, we have Magnolia Parkway, Bailey, and then we'll add in obviously McCard here in the next, year and a half or so. So that's important things to be able to, work up with traffic and doing those things. So, but
Yeah, once you've moved from what we call New Pearland to I'm in the old Pearland,
mhm.
Old Town Pearland, you don't go back to New Pearland. So and then until they build a Total Wine in New Pearland, and then all of a sudden you got to go back. you know, I always
Well,
laugh because I'm like, I got all my everything I need over here except for Total Wine. Now I got to go down there,
yeah.
and it'll be nice to be able to take McCard Road. That'll be super helpful.
Yeah, well, and that's the kind of interesting thing, as you mentioned, the Pearland Town Center, which came in about 2005, they just generated such a huge growth for us, and then now on the east side, we've almost seen a duplication of what's in the town center in terms of businesses and retail opportunities on Pearland Parkway. So I think that speaks volumes to the size of our community and where the development has occurred, because we have just as much residential activity over on the east side, over in Riverstone Ranch, that is happening. So, that's just fueling our growth even more. So, very fortunate in that regard.
Great. And so we are very proud of Killens here in Pearland. So I think they're the signature place, right? When I meet people, that's what they say. They say, "Hey, oh, hey, you're that barbecue joint that you gotta wait outside to get in." And I'm like, absolutely, come on down, visit our great city. So we have Killens. Any other great places that somebody should check out when they go out to Pearland?
Well, there's about 140 of them, quite honestly.
That's a very political answer, by the way.
Oh, I know.
Great,
It's
great
like,
job. You should run for mayor next time. You're like, well, there's 140 great restaurants. Matter of
yeah,
fact, start with Jack in the Box all the way to.
a ton of different types of restaurants, and our CVB has a great linkage to the different restaurants and stuff.
Oh, great.
You mentioned Killens, and obviously they've done quite well, and with the uh, operations that Ronnie does in terms of the steakhouse, and the TMX and the burger joint. But we have some great Italian food here in Pearland. Grazia's and Taglia. Those are really good. Just a lot of good Asian food when you look at it. Of course, several barbecue places. I mean, that's the nice thing about Pearland is whatever it is you're going to want, it's probably here. It may be on the west side or the east side or in between, but it's just a matter of finding that, and just being able to go there. I mean, there's new restaurant concepts opening up in that regard. So that's always something in flex. But, I mean, I think it's to your advantage to, sample a little bit of everything, obviously.
Yep.
And Jason, it sounds like you have a favorite already. So, um,
Well, no, actually, so I love all the different things. We're big fans, but I got to give a shout out to the folks over at Emma's. They are homegrown, built right out of Pearland, which I greatly appreciate. Phenomenal Mexican restaurant, and then also you mentioned Grazia during the pandemic when everything had got shut down. They did a wonderful job of getting food out to folks and just creating an environment and a culture, even though the restaurant wasn't open. They have a phenomenal group over there. So I got to give those guys a lot of kudos and credit. They really stepped up. So it was fun to see that. We have just a really great culture. And I think it stems not just from Pearland, but it's kind of a Texas thing. And then it goes all the way down to every city. I think once we move in, we become neighborly. I still appreciate that about our culture, especially in the pockets, the Pearlands, the Deer Parks, the Pasadenas. If somebody needs you to get your boat out to get them out of something, we're there. And, if we need some F-150s to go pull somebody out, we're there. It's that kind of culture, and it's fun to be a part of. So last thing as we wrap up, if somebody wants to know more, if I'm a resident of Pearland and I want to better understand what's happening, the work you're doing, what I can expect, what I can see, where do I go? How do I stay in tune or stay connected?
Well, obviously, the easiest way is our website, and we have a really thorough and up-to-date website that has information from demographics to what businesses are here, what we're doing in terms of our plans of work and strategic plan. And our website is pearlandedc.com. Couldn't be any easier than that. But it allows you to look at a lot of different points of information from, what's our education, what's our population growth. We have so many data points on there. It's unbelievable. And then we also have a section on there on new developments. So that's a good thing. We have a great marketing director who is continually working on that website and also posts our quarterly newsletter and updates, and whenever we have announcements, those are all there archived. There's also information about when we have our meetings, for our board meetings and those type of things. So that's where I would send people to go initially. Look at that and see if there's, information that you need, or if it's not there, then, contact us. There's a contact form on there that you can send that in, and we'll work with you and get whatever information we can find, obviously. So, but yeah, I think that's the number one spot.
Great. Thank you so much. And you had mentioned Jessica Byerly earlier. She's doing a great job, and that's how I got in contact with you. But it's just great to be able to know that there's organizations and just like the Economic Alliance, you have. I think when people first move into a place, they think of it as a home and a place that and then they think of schools and then places to eat. What they don't realize is they can become an active member of their local community. They don't have to just reside there, park their car there, get up and go to work. If you're going to live there and you're going to be involved, it makes sense to know the things that are taking place. And the stuff's not hidden. It's not secret. It's not kept secret. There's a lot of great stuff taking place. You just got to ask questions. That's, again, purpose of this show is to bring that information to people in the local regions. And so, Brian, again, thank you for the work that you've done as a citizen. I'm thankful because I look at it every day. I'm especially grateful for that work inside of 288 and what I know it's going to bring from a home value perspective. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about the school districts you mentioned. Those, they are just great, and our city just continues to look beautiful. We've got great roads. I'm humbled to be there and thankful for your work. And so to our audience, we would always ask you to encourage, if you know of anybody that's a great person for us to have a discussion regionally that touches this kind of I-10, 610 corridor, anything that loops in and comes off that Gulf Coast. The Economic Alliance is a proud supporter of all the work that's going on and advocate for you. We want to be a voice for you. Please tune in regularly. You can subscribe to our channel at the Economic Alliance Houston Port Region. You can go right there and subscribe, tune into our regular shows. we have people like Brian on all the time. Again, Brian, thank you. I hope you have a great day and good luck out there. And we'll see you. Maybe I'll catch you at some barbecue soon or something. Matter of fact,
Sounds good.
that you mentioned earlier, that 1/2 cent raise. Next time I see my tax bill go up, I'm calling you and we're going to Killings because I know you got a raise too. So.
Sales tax, not property tax.
Oh, dang. All right. Dang. All right. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you and I hope you have a great day. And we'll see you out there. Thanks you guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.